The Black Death. It struck Europe in 1347, carried by fleas and black rats traveling aboard merchant ships. Within just a few years, the bubonic plague wiped out between 75 and 200 million people across Europe, Asia, and North Africa. To put that into perspective, Europe lost about one-third of its entire population. Imagine living in a city where every third person you know suddenly disappears. Streets lined with carts carrying bodies, mass graves being dug, and doctors in those creepy bird-like plague masks trying and failing to stop the spread. But the Black Death didn't just kill, it changed society. With so many workers gone, peasants suddenly had bargaining power. Wages rose, feudalism weakened, and Europe entered a new social and economic era. Spanish flu. Fast forward to the end of World War I, soldiers were returning home, but they brought with them more than just stories from the front lines. They carried the H1N1 influenza virus, better known as the Spanish flu. This pandemic infected about a third of the world's population. That's 500 million people at the time. Somewhere between 50 and 100 million people in just 2 years. That's more than both world wars combined. And what made it so terrifying was who it killed. Unlike most flus, which hit the very young and very old, the Spanish flu targeted healthy young adults, people in their 20s and 30s. Entire families were wiped out overnight. Hospitals overflowed, coffins ran out, and some towns resorted to mass burials. Yet, because the world was focused on the war, governments downplayed it. Only Spain reported about it, which is why it became known as the Spanish flu. AIDS. Not all pandemics come and go in a few years. Some linger for decades, and AIDS is one of them. First identified in 1981, AIDS is caused by the human immunodeficiency virus, which weakens the immune system and leaves people vulnerable to deadly infections. Since the start of the epidemic, AIDS has killed more than 40 million people worldwide. And today, over 39 million people are still living with HIV. Today, with antiretroviral therapy, people with HIV can live long, healthy lives. Still, the pandemic isn't over, and in parts of Africa, it remains one of the leading causes of death. COVID-19. Of course, we can't ignore the pandemic that's fresh in everyone's memory, COVID-19. It began in late 2019 in Wuhan, China, and within months, the coronavirus had spread to every continent except Antarctica. The world went into lockdown, planes were grounded, businesses closed, entire cities went silent. As of now, the official death toll is around 7 million. But experts believe the real number, including unreported deaths, could be 15 to 20 million. Beyond the numbers, COVID changed how we live: remote work, online schooling, masks, and discussions over vaccines. It also exposed inequalities in health care and highlighted just how fragile our interconnected world really is. Cholera flu. Cholera might not get as much attention today, but in the 1800s, it was one of the world's most feared diseases. The third cholera pandemic was the deadliest, sweeping across Asia, Europe, and North America. Tens of thousands died in London, Paris, and New York. Globally, the death toll ran into the millions. But here's the turning point. In 1854, a London physician named Dr. John Snow traced a cholera outbreak to a contaminated water pump on Broad Street. This discovery laid the foundation for modern public health, sanitation systems, and epidemiology. So, in a way, cholera reshaped how we fight disease even today.
Hong Kong flu.
Just a decade later, another flu pandemic hit, the Hong Kong flu, caused by the H3 antivirus. It spread worldwide and killed about 1 million people. While that's far lower than Spanish flu, it was still a major global health crisis. It proved that influenza viruses constantly evolve and why vaccines have to keep changing every year. Ebola outbreak. Ebola outbreak isn't the deadliest by numbers, but it's one of the scariest. The Ebola outbreak in West Africa killed over 11,000 people between 2014 and 2016. Ebola has a terrifying fatality rate, up to 90% in some outbreaks, and it causes internal bleeding, organ failure, and rapid death. What made the 2014 outbreak especially dangerous was how it spread into large cities for the first time. Global panic set in, but massive international cooperation and local support eventually brought it under control. Today, we even have Ebola vaccines, a scientific achievement that once seemed impossible. Asian flu. In the late 1950s, another influenza virus emerged, this time the H2N2 strain. It started in China and spread quickly around the globe, killing 1 to 2 million people. The response was far better than during the Spanish flu. Within months, a vaccine was developed and distributed. That rapid scientific progress limited the damage, but the Asian flu still ranks among the deadliest pandemics of the 20th century. Antonine plague. Back in the 2nd century AD, the Roman Empire was at its peak. Then came the Antonine plague, likely smallpox brought home by soldiers returning from campaigns in the East. Over 15 years, it killed about 5 million people, including to Roman emperors. The empire's military and economy were crippled, and many historians believe this pandemic marked the beginning of Rome's long decline. So, what do we learn from these pandemics? That humanity is fragile but also resilient. From the Black Death to COVID-19, pandemics remind us that disease has always been part of the human story. But they also push science, medicine, and societies to adapt. Every outbreak reshaped the world in ways people living through them couldn't have imagined. Breaking empires, rewriting economies, advancing science, and changing how we live with one another. The Antonine plague weakened Rome, cholera gave birth to modern public health. The Spanish flu redefined how nations respond to crises. And COVID-19 showed us just how connected and vulnerable our globalized world really is. In the end, pandemics are more than just medical disasters, they're turning points in history. They remind us that progress often comes from struggle and survival often sparks innovation. While each pandemic left scars, they also left behind knowledge that made humanity stronger for the future. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share because understanding history is one of the best ways to prepare for the future.